Welcome students in this lecture. Today I am going to discuss Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is included in your core paper named Popular Literature. Now, in your class I have already discussed in details, in an elaborate way, the modes and mannerism of detective fiction. It is very interesting that this particular text, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, is included in your popular literature. It should have been included in your detective fiction paper. Nevertheless, we can also consider Agatha Christie's novel as part of popular literature. Why? To find an answer to this question, we need to go in a brief way. We have to focus on the life of Agatha Christie, as she was a hugely popular writer. Now, Agatha Christie was born in Devon, England. Christie was not her original name. Her original name was Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller. She was married to R.R.M, who was an aviator in the Royal Flying Corps, and that is why she adopted the surname from her husband. Now, it was the time of the First World War when Christie started to write his first novel, The Mysterious Affairs at Style. It was completed, she completed writing the novel at 1916, but nevertheless at the World War was going on, she managed to publish her first novel in the year 1920, after the war was over, and featuring the detective, as you all know, Hercule Poirot, who is a man from Belgium. It is very interesting that Christie, being British, being raised and born and brought up and lived in England, she took a protagonist, the detective protagonist, from another country, Belgium. It is noteworthy that the famous character Tintin by Hergé, the famous protagonist of the graphic novel, Hergé's graphic novel Tintin also belongs from Belgium. Belgium is not a very developed European country, not the first, the three names that we have, England, France and Germany. Belgium belongs to the second grade of European countries. But nevertheless, it is very interesting, and by adopting the means to make a protagonist from a non-British country is definitely a very significant move on the part of the author. Nevertheless, you see, coming back to the life of Agatha Christie, her relationship with her husband was not very honky-dory or was not proper. Actually, there was an element of debauchery. She discovered that her husband, Archie Christie, was involved in an illegal affair with another woman, and after getting to know about her husband's affair, she filed a divorce. This is very interesting regarding or understanding this novel, because in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd we find that Ralph Paton, the stepson of Roger Ackroyd, was married to Ursula Bourne. He was legally married, but he kept his marriage relation a secret, and keeping it secret, he professed his inclination or his love for Flora Ackroyd, so that he can inherit the fortune, the wealth. So there is an aspect of deception and secrecy, because Agatha Christie had herself witnessed or experienced this debauchery, deception in her personal life. This is a very interesting thing to know. However, In the year 1930, she married another man named Max Malone, who was an archaeologist. And while traveling to the Middle East with her new husband, by witnessing the natural landscape, and she began to write the next famous novel, which is Murder on the Orient Express. And this novel was written during an extended stay at a hotel in Istanbul, capital of Turkey. Now again, it was the time of the World War II, and as the Germans dropped bomb in England, she was very afraid, and she wrote a story where Hercule Poirot would murder her another famous fictional character, Miss Marple, and vice versa. And she had told that if I die in the war, if I do not remain alive, then only publish the story where both of my famous fictional characters, detective protagonists, would be killed. I think she had a definite psychological association or affinity with her own creation. She was a hugely popular writer, as I've already mentioned. She was honored as the commander of the Order of the British Empire in the year 1956, and the Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire in the year 1971. Her husband was knighted as well. So, few things that you should know about her writings, that she had written more than 80 books and numerous short stories, which have been sold over 1 billion copies in England. Her play, famous play The Mousetrap, is the longest running play in history with over 23,000 shows. It is very interesting that only Bible has sold more copies than Christie's books. She had also adopted a pen name, a pseudonym, which was Mary Westmacott. So this was her pseudonym. Now, she died in the year 1976 out of definitely natural cause. But before death, she was suffering from Alzheimer's disease, loss of memory. And what she had written in the last novel of Hercule Poirot, which is The Curtain and Sleeping Murder, both of which she locked away and intended to publish only after her death, which reflects the death of her fictional character Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot. It is very significant to know that Hercule Poirot remains the only fictional character in the entire history of literature to have received an obituary after his death. On August 6, 1975, a headline ran in the famous newspaper, the New York Times, that Poirot is dead, famed Belgian detective Hercule Poirot, the detective, dies. So, this is perhaps the most appreciated and the best reward a writer could have in his or her life. Now, coming back to the story, this novel, Murder of Roger Ackroyd, is set in England in the fictional town named King's Abbots. It was written in the year 1920, however, it was published 6 years later in 1926. This is very interesting, the novel, because it has been told from the first person narrative, narrated by, as you all know, Dr. James Shepherd, who turns out to be the criminal himself. So the narrator is actually the villain. This is a unique literary technique adopted by Agatha Christie. I should not say that she is the only writer, as I've told you in the class. Satyajit Ray's detective Feluda in his novel Golabi Mukta Rahosyo, the narrator Topshe also conceals some facts from the reader, as it was advised by Feluda. So this is a quite similar literary technique which has been adopted by other writers of detective genre. So, as the reader eventually learns, Shepard is an unreliable narrator, and he deliberately recounts the story within a limited point of view in order to keep his guilt a secret. Now, the famous writer Willard Huntington Wright, in the year 1927, in an essay which is named as titled "The Great Detective Stories," published in the book "The Art of the Mystery Stories," edited by Howard Haycraft. So Willard Huntington Wright is writing, "The trick played on the reader in the murder of Roger Ackroyd," I quote, "is hardly a legitimate device of the detective story writer, and while Poirot's work in his book is at times capable, the effect is nullified by the denouement." So, an interesting remark by another writer of detective fiction. For many years, Christie's twist ending was considered as a mutilation of the conventional structure of the detective fiction, alteration of the usual pattern, the framework of a detective story, but it is also an instance where a brilliant detective and the objective narrator, for example, are expected to be able and to be taken as granted. So, in my next lecture, I am going to discuss the critical aspects of this novel.